Okej allesammans, välkomna tillbaka nu är det liksom slutspurten av den här dagen kan man väl säga egentligen. Mitt namn är Linnea Thulin och jag är ordförande i Sveriges Arkitekter Skåne. Och det som händer nu framöver är faktiskt vad vi i Sveriges Arkitekter Skåne har fixat. Och jag tänkte bara berätta lite kort om det är så att det är någon som inte vet vilka vi är eller vad vi håller på med. Men vi är då en lokalnod inom Sveriges Arkitekter och vi jobbar för att skapa kunskap och väcka nyfikenhet om arkitektur och föra olika arkitekturdialoger här lokalt. Och vi håller för det mesta till här inne på Form & Design Center, vilket är väldigt lyxigt. Men vi kan också vara ute på andra platser runt om i regionen då. Och en del av vår kärnverksamhet är att vi har så kallade A-barer då, eller arkitekturbarer där vi diskuterar olika arkitekturfrågor. Och i samband med arkitekturdagen idag så lanserar vi också vårt höstprogram. Och det finns liksom lite affischer där borta på bordet som ni jättegärna får ta med er, ett par stycken och hänga upp på er kontor eller ha hemma och sådär. Och vårt höstprogram kommer att ta sig uttryck ur portalparagrafen i PBL. Vi kommer fokusera lite extra på jämlika livsvillkor och hållbara miljöer för dagens och kommande generationer. Och vi kommer ha några event kopplat till det då och jättekort så kommer vi att prata den 9 oktober om årets, lite mer fördjupat om årets arkitekturpris, eller Skånes arkitekturpris och de tidigare arkitekturpriserna. Och den 23 oktober kommer vi prata om Öresundsbron som fyller 25 år i år, vad det har haft för betydelse för regionen och arkitekturen. Och sen kommer vi ha en säsongsavslutning den 28 november som kommer vara fokus på konsthallen som fyller 50 år. Och då kommer vi bjuda in Adam Crusoe som pratar mer om det. Så ni är hjärtligt välkomna att komma på våra träffar och ta gärna med er en sån här print för att hänga upp och sprida bland era kollegor och kompisar. Jag lämnar över till dig, Kristoffer, om du inte har du något att tillägga.
Nej, jag tänker liksom, eller det vi pratat om med den här tematiken är kanske att den är lite bortglömd kanske i hur man pratar, liksom tänker om plan- och bygglagen och vad den kan göra och sådär. Så det var lite grann med den ingången som den här tematiken kändes viktig att påminna om.
Tillbaka till rötterna på något sätt, var vi kommer ifrån och vad vi gör, varför vi gör det.
But I thought I'll introduce Daniel. I'm Christopher and work for the city of Malmö, but also with Linnea. And we've been working now together, Daniel and with Anna, Sumaya and Maria Ose, who I've never met, for the last 2 years here in Malmö and in the harbor. And during that time, you become like partners in crime and a friend. But we have mostly talked about the harbor and Malmö and a little bit on what you do on the other side of the world. So somehow I really look forward to see what that has been and somehow also which is the basis why we work together here somehow. So really look forward to hearing more and keep on doing being a partner in crime.
I have a very long presentation, so I'm going to set the timer, and I won't. No, but I need to control this. So yes, thank you, Christopher, for that introduction, and I can't say it better. It's been a fabulous experience for us as a team to be part of dreaming the future of the harbor in Malmö, and thank you to the Form Design Center also for allowing us to present our work today. My name is Daniel Feldman. I run an architecture firm in Bogota, between Bogota and New York, called Zita, which is Industrial Zone Architecture Workshop. And what I'm going to tell today is almost a autobiographical story of what we have been doing in the office, because in a way the office is kind of our life in a weird way. And it all started when we finished architecture school and had my first job working for a professor and seeing how a lot of the work that we were doing ended up in roles and flat files and nothing happened of it. And granted, many times, if the financial conditions don't allow for things to happen, like holes get dug and spirals don't get built. But a lot of what we were doing was actually dealing with bringing infrastructure to these really poor settings around Colombia. And the idea that we were producing files and printing them and jumping onto the next one started bothering me. Because I grew up learning that architects are kind of this, right? They are these people that go out there on sites and inspire their workers and know how to build and know how to cut stone and know how to do things. And this is what we were doing. And soon enough, I realized that it wasn't just this perception that I was getting, but it was a generalized idea, because when in 2011 Obama was invited to the Pritzker Award ceremony, he went up on stage and said, now, as Tom mentioned, my interest in architecture goes way back. There was a time when I thought I could be an architect, where I expected to be more creative than I turned out. So I had to go into politics instead, and everyone laughed. And I was very furious at this phrase, because here's this guy that I truly admire saying that we are the lucky ones because we're creative, and this poor guy, he's not creative, so he has to be the president of the United States. And this kind of notion that since we're creative, we're lucky really started bothering me. And I wanted to change that. And so when Architecture for Humanity sadly doesn't exist anymore, but when they opened up this competition to do a community center in a favela in Rio de Janeiro, I entered with my partner, with then friend and architect Elizabeth Añaños. We placed second, but Architecture for Humanity contacted us and offered us the possibility of going there, moving there, being kind of the project manager for it, and redesigning it with Torsten, Nolte, and Nandaesques, who ended up getting in first place, but their project couldn't be built. So we kind of did a new thing, but ultimately what was important for me is I got the possibility of being in the middle of everything, which I thought is where we should be, because I was handling the donations, handling the site, dealing with the mayor's office, dealing with the client, dealing with the community, and ultimately doing the project. And it was this weird location in Rio that no one really knows about, way, way, way out west, and it's not the beautiful beaches or the kind of more Hollywood-esque favelas. It was like the truly deep Rio that no one talks about. And it was this kind of abandoned soccer pitch, and we redesigned the project, and I did this process where I would go and present it to the community and get their feedback and see how we could improve it or change it or make it better or worse. And it was just a really small project. It's kind of this small ramp with a soccer pitch in front of it and a small multi-use room inside. And the idea was to create like a theater on the top and then the educational and soccer spaces on the bottom. And 4 months into my life in Brazil, I was able to begin the construction of this project. That was really amazing for me, although the community was still kind of not convinced. This is kind of a very telling image of what every day looked like. I did a lot of local hiring along with Getulio. He's the community leader, and he helped me hire locally. And construction just began, and I was living on the site and really dealing with the realities of being an architect who builds his projects and kind of struggling with all the decisions I had made because I couldn't go back on them anymore once they're built. And it was, I mean, yeah, a year out of architecture school, I was doing this and kind of dealing with the other complexities of being in these settings, because it was during it was during a political cycle. Over here you can see this is Gilma, she wanted to get reelected, and there was Lula and stuff. And so we had a lot of these political caravans saying that they were doing the project, so I had to do community meetings that kind of looked like this on this street. Oh, I don't know what this... how do I get out of this? Okay. And so this is what the meetings would look like. Meanwhile, the process was continuing to happen, and when we hit the stage of like a ramp starting to be built, rumors that we were doing a second-level highway on top of all the rural fields started to emerge, and so I was able to get a spot in the community radio every Wednesday at 1 p.m. I would do a show with Colombian music and answer phone calls and kind of deal with all the rumors that were going on. And we had a topping off ceremony with Cameron and Michael and Torsten and Nanda, and the construction kind of continued against all odds. We tore down fences and reutilized them to build the new fences for our soccer pitch, and brought like really high, like top of the line finishings. Well, I mean, it wasn't marble, but it was like really good finishings to this site that wasn't used to getting like high quality architecture built in it. And 10 months after I moved to Brazil, I was very happy to open the project to the community, and we had the men's and women's homeless World Cup teams of Brazil do the first game on our pitch. And throughout this whole time, my parents were very scared that I moved to a favela and what's going to happen to my poor kid. And so I set up a blog where I would post pictures of the progress of the job every evening. And for some reason, the First Lady of Colombia saw that blog and learned that there was this young Colombian architect who liked to go to difficult places and build with communities. And she contacted me and told me that she wanted to set up a program that would focus on bringing high quality services for early childhood in the war-torn areas of Colombia, and asked me if I wanted to be her architect. So I moved to the presidential palace from the favela, and I started learning a lot about early childhood, and I was struck by this notion that the best investment a country can do is in early childhood. And so this is a CAT scan of a child's brain when they're 0 years old, 6 years old, and 14 years old. And this is all based on research done by James Heckman in the University of Chicago, but he was able to prove that most of the neurological activity that happens in a child's brain peaks at age 6, and from there on, things solidify and kind of go down. And so whatever you can do from 0 to 6 years old is actually the best investment a country can do on itself. And with that kind of understanding of the importance of what we were about to embark upon, we met our first site, this town called Villarrica, 16,000 people, 67% poverty rate, 20% illiteracy rate, and just a typical Colombian like rural reality. But one that you can understand through its geography, because if I were to go through this red line you see on the screen from right to left or bottom to up, you would start in the Amazon jungle, then go through the snowy peaks of Cauca, and then end in the Pacific coast, which means you have every type of soil you want in the world and access to the ocean, which obviously you've seen the movies of Colombia. And then on the other hand, we are on the equator, which means that the rain cycles are hyper accelerated. So we permanently have rain, condensation, and evaporation happening at the same time. So this is the cloudiest part of the world and the most humid part of the world, which also means that you can't patrol it by air. So that's why all of the drugs end up leaving from the Pacific coast. And sure enough, that's where Villarrica is. And while we were doing the project, the police station got bombed twice. And these were the realities that we were dealing with. And we were also dealing with the reality that the kids, this was their kindergarten nowadays, which were just homes of very humble, very hardworking women that were offering a room within their house to do a kindergarten. So we started visiting these homes of these women to see what we could learn from the work that they were doing a lot of these community meetings to see what the kids wanted, what the teenagers wanted. They wanted a cinema, they wanted a catwalk to do like hairdressing pageants, all these different things, what the mothers wanted, the community wanted, and ultimately ended up doing a project very much inspired by bamboo groves, which are native to this area but have been mostly cut down to do sugarcane fields. And we proposed to do this, we call it El Guadual, which is the bamboo grove, and it's just a kindergarten that had like 5 different pairs of classrooms around the central courtyard with a little string of water, and then just like a more kind of communal block in the front that opens up to the street or to the back. And these were kind of the drawings that we were bringing to present to the community, what we were doing, but ultimately what we were really doing was trying to work with what was there, because these are places that you can't really bring materials to because you get guerrilla checkpoints, and then when you're bringing the materials, they steal them from you and the project gets defunded. You don't have permanent water, you don't have permanent electricity. So I always say we were kind of doing, I learned to, I wasn't necessarily an environmental architect or green architect, but the realities kind of pushed me towards becoming kind of green by design, not green design. And so we worked with local materials, local hands, local workers. We did these systems that would bring sun in so that we wouldn't rely on energy, we wouldn't rely on ventilation systems, and we would be able to collect all the rainwater that we could, and also learn a lot from the place through all of these visits to the houses we did. And this is on the left, you see the floor plan for the house that I showed you, Sulman's house, and basically the purple square was a classroom. And what was beautiful about this kindergarten inside this woman's house is that when the kids wanted to go out to the field, they could run out to the field and play with the lizards. If they wanted to go to the bathroom, they could just go to the bathroom. If they were hungry, they'd go to the kitchen. If they were tired, they'd go into her living room, versus what we were seeing in these kindergartens, which were just very clean, simple, squared rooms. And when a kid wanted to go to the bathroom, they'd have to ask for the teacher to bring him to the bathroom. Or when they wanted to be outside, they'd have to wait for recess. And when we were thinking about what that does to the brain of the child, it basically limits the possibility of being a decision-making individual, because everything in the day is plotted out for you and they decide for you, versus what was happening in these homes, which was that the kids were deciding what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And when you consider the fact that after kindergarten, these kids enter school, and in school they have to choose which side of the war they want to be in, the possibility of maybe seeing more options and being a better trained individual decision maker became really important for us. And so the classrooms we did ended up having their own bathroom, their own patio, their stairs, 7 different ways of going in and out. They were interconnected to the classroom next to it. They had little mountains that they could go out of, and the teachers found them very difficult to be teachers in these rooms, but it was great for us because we were forcing the kids to pay attention. They weren't like controlled. They were really being able to be wild and go all over the place. We presented the project to the community. It was thankfully approved, and just like a typical construction process started, just that we could only do 1 shipment of materials. As I said, the second one always gets ransacked by the checkpoints that the guerrilla would set up. And so a lot of what we did was plan on building with local knowledge and local materials. And so we did the formwork out of these bamboo sheets that the guys used to build over there. We trained the women that were going to be the teachers to be the bamboo workers, so that they can offer maintenance services afterwards and hopefully keep the place going well. And then we did one specific strategy that I was super proud of, is that we had this fence in bamboo, and the builder didn't want to do it because bamboo collects water, because it's hollow in the middle. And we had asked the mothers that were going to then become the teachers to collect soda bottles and paint them with their kids. And they had this bunch of soda bottles collected when we were throughout the whole construction process. And so when the builder told us he wasn't going to build the fence if we did not accept an additional cost of these PVC caps, it was 4,500 caps, and it was basically totaling to like $10,000. We asked the women to come to bring their bottles and install them themselves. So the community became a donor in their own project that we were kind of funding through these international governments. And so this is what it looked like in the end. And you could see the kids going up and down the mountains and crossing to the next door, and all the kind of sun coming in and the water being collected, and all these things that we were dreaming that we could accomplish in this very forgotten rural area. The outdoor movie theater that the kids were asking for, and a bunch of different things. And word came around that the First Lady was doing this, so we got a bunch of municipalities all over the country asking for the same type of attention. So we went up to the jungle and we found this community that clearly needed shade. So we did a big shady kindergarten for them. Kind of a similar process. I'm just gonna go throughout these really quickly. 5 minutes? Oh. Okay, mentira. I thought I had 30 minutes, not 20. Oh, yeah, that's tough. Anyway, we kept on doing these projects all over the place, and ultimately we built 32 kindergartens in those 4 years that I was there, and became even political propaganda. And I was offered the opportunity to go study in the US, and after a couple scares throughout the country, I decided to take it. And when I finished my school, I came back home and tried to operate in the same way, but in an urban setting, which I found was a different challenge because there's more kind of commercial interest in it. And so I understood that the way of operating in the urban setting with the same kind of mentality was to try to find forgotten pieces of history that were close to being extinct but had a value for the place. And very few people really know this or care or even cared about this, but Le Corbusier did a plan for the future of Bogota in 1953. None of it got built, only the little kind of weird red polygon that was the industrial zone And the city grew immensely, and the industrial zone that was planned by Le Corbusier to be the end of the city now is in the middle of the city, and it's the biggest collection of these industrial buildings from the 1950s that sadly at this point basically don't operate, they became obsolete. Like the industry doesn't fit in the industrial zone anymore. And so what's happening is a lot of these are getting bought up to be torn down and turned into gated communities. So I decided to come up with a project that no one asked for to present a different way of developing the future of the industrial zone. It became a research project that I did and also a policy project that I was suggesting for the city with a different way of dealing with incentives to preserve these buildings and not necessarily allow them to be torn down. It did kind of a full master plan for it and ideas on how this could look and how living there could be. And I presented it to the planning office and they congratulated me, thanked me, and showed me the door. I also presented it to a couple private investors who also said, like, listen, I don't want to be the first one. Go ahead, do it. When there's a market, I'm interested. I don't want to be the pioneer. So I went ahead, and this warehouse was in, my family had this warehouse many years ago. It was not really being utilized in a smart manner. And I went in and I kind of cut the bread, as I say it. I chopped it up into 5 different workshops, and the office building, the office space in the front, like the purple, it was a couple other workshops, less interesting. And with the money that I had saved from working in the US, I just went ahead and turned the warehouse into these studios that then I had to go out and market and try to get clients for. And fortunately enough, I was able to create a market that those developers didn't think was possible. And these have been rented out for the past 10 years now. And yeah, even these little kind of office spaces, I turned into my house, and I was the first person to live in the industrial zone in Bogota, a little bit illegally, but we still are there. And with my partner, Anna Sokolov, we realized that if we really wanted the city to care about this place, we had to create an open public space, not just these closed workshops for people who pay rent. And so we were able to purchase this other warehouse that was in intense disrepair. It was an old car shop that was really falling apart. And with really small kind of architectural moves, we basically turned it into, we did a lot of maintenance really on it, and we turned it into a public space for large-scale historic art installations. And while we were operating the art space, we also started modifying the rest of the building to turn it into our house. And now we live in an art space. As you can see there in the back, the next pictures you'll see it's more evolved, but this became kind of our house gallery space that we operate and live in, and kind of rent out a couple of spaces more, and gave a viability and demonstrated that this is doable, but at the same time created a reason for people to come to the industrial zone, because just the landscape and just the buildings is not enough. So people come to our warehouse to see these large-scale pieces of art from very famous artists, and then we tell them the story, and when they go out, they see the neighborhood, and now people started to care. That's our house in the far end, like the second floor. I'm not going to talk about my house too much, but what's important is that throughout this whole time, this big urban project that I had proposed to the city actually got awarded in the Oslo Triennale. It was part of the neighborhood index, and it also was awarded in the Seoul Biennial of Architecture in Korea. And the mayor changed, and the second mayor, then the former mayor, and then the mayor that is now the former mayor came in, and she learned about what we were doing and asked me to come in and present to her and to the planning office what our vision for the future of the industrial zone was. And they were in charge of changing the land use plan for the next 20 years, and they bought it. And so we ended up having our project become public policy. As you can see, in 2021, the Plan de Ordenamiento Territorial, which is the land use plan for the next 20 years of Bogota, included number 13, the industrial zone in Bogota, as a specific place that needed a specific code and rules on how it's going to be developed. And the Urban Renewal Company of Bogota ended up being responsible for that. And they hired me as an architect, kind of their head architect and advisor for the CEO, to help him define the future of this place and many others in Bogota. And so this little part that you see without shade is the one that ended up receiving all of these incentives for the preservation of the historic part. It's a broader project now, obviously, and many more systems are taken into account and stuff, but this is coming of another representation of the rules that I've been playing with for 10 years to develop this part of Bogota and the way that it is. And now now the mayor is very happy to present the future of the industrial zone like this versus what it used to be with just like tear down and do these gated communities. And in a funny way, this kind of obsession and dream for the development of the future of the industrial zone in Bogota is kind of what brought us here to Nyhamnen, where we are right now in Malmö. And when we came here, we were asked to give value to the place and help create an understanding of how it could be developed by giving new uses and giving new value to what exists there, by caring for it and maintaining it and not just tearing it down. So we did a lot of these urban studies on what could be done and what was the condition of Nyhamnen at the moment, and also kind of the historic reality of why it is what it is, and then these like more traditional kind of inventories of the place. But we were asked, and one of the things that the contract asked for was to do an inventory, and so we did the normal ones, but what we did that I think was important is we did an inventory of activation strategies, because we realized that the biggest problem the place had at the moment was that nobody goes to it and thinks it's far, thinks it's dark, thinks it's dirty and scary, and it's super close by. So we thought that by activating it, we can change the narrative of the place. And so we assembled all of those activation strategies in this image, and within this concept that we developed for the future of Nyhamnen as a multi-species food-driven neighborhood centered on reutilizing the existing historic built environment. And this idea, we were also asked to kind of develop an example of what that could look like or what that could be. And we were fortunate to be able to develop 3 examples of these, or 3 of the 17 activation strategies so far. The first one was this car ramp. Maybe some of you have seen it, maybe some of you used it when the ferry was still active, but it's a car ramp that has been sitting empty for 25 years. And we thought that this could become a theater. So we found pieces of concrete and old tanker ropes that were donated to us by a shipping company, and we turned it into a theater. It can sit 120 people, and we felt that offering an infrastructure for cultural events to happen in the place was an important first step in allowing for people to start coming there and occupying the place. And if you were to go today over there, it's open. It's an open air. It's an open theater. We also wanted to do a more symbolical project in a way. We call it the urban tapestry. So it's a set of different carpets that represent many of the backgrounds that are found in the city of Malmö. And we hope that this was a place of gathering and coming together, like these places that are kind of carpeted and become these community centers in different parts of the world. And we again used some materials we found on site to do seating, but also part of what we were doing there was taking down fences, because this has been closed off for so many years. And we have this narrative of using what's there and loving what's there, and then we tear down fences that are difficult to love. But we turned them into these pergolas, and we wove patterns onto it with Malmö Väv, the weavers organizations here in Malmö, and these became kind of very atypical but fun urban furniture that is now out on site and that you can go and have fun in. And then, since we are very obsessed with this idea that this should be for more than just humans, it should be a multi-species place for the future of Malmö, we understood that we needed to bring vegetation and greenery in order to offer basically food sources for insects, birds, rodents, everything that we get out there. And it was a bit of a challenge, technically speaking, because since the site is contaminated, we couldn't really open up holes on the ground. We didn't have the time or the money to remediate all of this, and so we started to plan on the possibility of doing a modular forest on top of the asphalt. And through research, we discovered many parks that are being built on top of highways that are sunk, so they get built on top of concrete. And through learning on what was done in the Madrid Rio project in Madrid, we were able to do this urban forest on top of asphalt that opened last Saturday. It's open for everyone to go visit now if you'd like. This whole thought process that we've been doing for Nyhamnen, we were also lucky enough to be invited to present it at Arkitekter. It was open for the public in Stockholm the last year. We now took it down and have all the pieces here, and we will install them in the public space in Nyhamnen hopefully soon. And ideally, if all works out, there's more stuff we could do. Thank you.